All right, this is a complicated one, and it's a long scenario. And there's no easy answer for this, and there's no easy explanation. I mean, this has been a series and a collision of unfortunate events and people not doing what they were supposed to, kicking cans, not serving your child globally. And I'm talking about in all of his educational performance areas of academics, social emotional development that would include behavior, communication, which is going to be a big one as well. And then, of course, now you've got a child moving into transition areas. But yet, what you're dealing with is you're dealing with a very intelligent child. But then on the social emotional development side, it's not there. And then I guarantee you that if you were to do a language evaluation that was focused on expressive communication, receptive communication, and then pragmatics, which is social communication, that you're going to see some major deficits probably in the pragmatic social communication aspect. And this is the part that's going to be difficult, okay? Because sometimes with some of our kids, these traditional environments are just not conducive. They're not positive places for our kids that are Asperger's, high functioning autism, for a myriad of reasons. I'm not saying that we couldn't make them proper environments. I mean, that's exactly what I do. But I tell you what, when you have a mounting or you have a mountain and a compiling level of trash and dung, which is what you've been going through, then at that point, you've got to sit there and you're sitting on a precipice of what you do for your son and which direction you need to go. And I'm just letting you know that, I mean, you have your 2-year statute of limitations in the state that you're in, where you can track this back for 2 years to try to recover some compensatory or some back services that I can tell you that they more than likely missed and did not do. And number one, in the area of social emotional development, and then combine that with communication with regards to social communication. So communication, social emotional development. Now, with regards to academics, his IQ and his abilities, his achievement, I'm sure that there's a gap between his achievement level or his predicted achievement level where he's currently functioning and then his IQ. But then that's all going to be interconnected with this social communication, his expressive and his receptive language skills, which I think are then going to come over and impact his abilities in written expression, his abilities in processing speed, which you brought up, are low. And these things can be fixed and they can be addressed, but they haven't been doing it. So now you have a kid that hates school because of that mountain of dung that is pressing on him. And he doesn't have enough time left to sit there and have you shovel all that dung off of him. And it's not your fault, and it's not his fault. But at the same time, this is the real world you're living in. So what are you to do about it? Now, what I would recommend is that you clean their clock as far as your school in trying to turn this into services for him. But I don't necessarily think that having him continue in a public school environment is positive. And so I would look at alternatives, and I would start looking outside the box to serve him. And look, our high schools, our middle schools do not mirror or replicate our colleges at all, period. These are very oppressive environments. Whereas, and this is what absolutely baffles me about our world today, is how oppressive these environments are in middle school and high school, and then flip on a dime, the kid graduates and all of a sudden it's this laissez-faire, nobody's babysitting you and nobody cares, and you go to college and you can do whatever you want, and same thing with community college. These environments, completely separate experiences, and as we all know that experienced them. Luckily, I went to high school during a time that it was a little bit more laissez-faire, and nobody was sitting there. It wasn't as tyrannical as our environments now, to where they've gone hyper loco on just wiping our kids' rears, and then scrutinizing every little thing that they do, to where their freedom of movement, their freedom of speech is extremely curtailed. But then, like I said, flip on a dime, and you sit there and you wonder why colleges need safe spaces now, because we're just not equipping our kids with what they need to function independently. So that was my soapbox. Let's bring this back about your son. I just am not convinced that environment, you can't get him to go anyway. And then he's going to get to the point to where compulsory education isn't going to apply to him. And at that point, nobody's going to make him stay in school. And so you've got to do something, and you can't force it, because if you force it, then he's going to rebel, as he's doing now. So you've got to think outside the box and create an environment that where he doesn't have a dung pile on his neck and on his back weighing him down. And if that is completing his coursework online, I've done that. I've developed that. This is sort of an out of the box solution we've been doing, and with a couple of our clients. It's fairly new this school year that we've been doing, to where they are still enrolled in school, are involved in an online to get their credits, okay? But it's almost like a quasi school and homeschool, all right? So they got the safety of the environment that and then we've just got to fill in the gaps with some specialized instruction and related services. So those components of the child's program is still there. The related services, speech language, OT, any specialized instruction, and then throw in some general education instruction. It doesn't need to be that much, maybe an hour a day, 3 or 4 days a week, on the online coursework to make sure that it continues to go. But little things. The social emotional side would have included helping your son self-monitor, be self-aware, to take responsibility for, or I hate the word take responsibility because many schools misuse that to be punitive, with regards to schoolwork and pencils and things of that nature, because these things have to be charted and taught. And obviously he doesn't have those skills. So what do you do about it? Like I said, you'd have a good case to go after them, and then be able to package your settlement agreement or your solutions based upon what would benefit him in this out-of-the-box environment that you create, and then have that take you the rest of the way. I believe that he would benefit from behavior analytic supports in the form of conducting what would be called an AFLS, AFLS, Functional Living Skills Assessment, to sort of fine-tune where his deficits are with regards to socialization. The other thing I recommend is that there's an expert here in Alabama, that is sort of my Asperger whisperer. She's excellent and an expert in this area, and I highly recommend. But she's written a couple books and that I think are extremely beneficial, and she has this long waiting list for her social development group, in Alabama. But her name's Carrie Mattia. And that's Kerrymatayaa. And I don't know why I'm spelling it, because I'm going to sit there and add the link. But she has 2 books that are on Amazon. One is Successful Problem Solving for High Functioning Students with Autism Spectrum Disorders, and the other one is Talk With Me, a step-by-step conversation framework for teaching conversational balance and fluency. I think those would be important. But I also believe that the other aspects in finding somebody with that expertise in teaching that social emotional development, and I also believe that if you find the right speech language pathologist, they have that skill set as well, to be able to teach that, because it has to be taught. Obviously, your son is not just learning this stuff naturally, so he needs to be guided in gaining those skills. Then that's going to come over to help with regards to the academics. Because I can guarantee you that's also part of his shutdown is the processing speed. He's quite cognizant of his intelligence, but then there's some deficits in between. And this is where I really like the Linda Mood Bell processes. There's somebody that I highly trust in Alabama that does an excellent job. And she can do the stuff as far as reading intervention for children with these kind of deficits. She has a new approach that they're using remote learning to, where as long as there's a proctor, which can be the parent on one end, they can do this remotely via the computer as far as the reading intervention and the reading therapy. And so that's an option. They may exist in your area, or, if you're interested, I can see what we could, put into place from, with this person in Alabama with regards to the reading intervention. But the other one that I wanted to bring up is that, with regards to your son's processing speed, I'm going to put a link up to a podcast. I am a huge Malcolm Gladwell fan. I think he's very intelligent. I like to listen to his podcast, Revisionist History. I love reading his books. He's Outliers especially. Just a very intelligent man. And I like the way he presents his information. But this past season of Revisionist History, so that's his 4th season, he has a podcast on there. The first 2 that he did that I think apply to your situation. And it's called, the first one was from June 20th, Puzzle Rush. And then the second one, because they both feed into each other. So Puzzle Rush, and then June 27th, The Tortoise and the Hare. And he sort of takes these arbitrary things in our society that we do, and some of them are damaging to our kids. And number one is this idea that we've got to do these things, where we test by speed, how quickly we can get finished with this work. And he delves into that and studies it. And I think that it would be very important for you to listen to his podcasts on that, because I think that's going to help you, along with everyone else that interacts with your son, sort of understand how he thinks. It's not that he can't do it. But if you apply arbitrary standards to him of how fast he has to do it, then you have a different child altogether. So like I said, you need to rethink how he is going to be served. And I just would not be trying to force your son, the round peg, into that square hole, which is the public school at this point. Too much has happened. And that's where the priority is your son and his emotional and his mental health, and setting him on a path for success, understanding his deficits so that then you can create a program that serves him, and stop trying to make these people change at this point, at his age, where he's at currently. Because he only has X number of years left, and you've got a long road to hoe if you think that these people are going to change overnight or on a dime. It never happens like that. In any of my cases, it takes a little bit of time to pull water from that well and overhaul programs when they're in this kind of situation. And I just don't. I wouldn't recommend it to you if I was representing. Now, I would recommend cleaning their clock to try to get a settlement agreement and a package that serves him in your new out of the box way of serving him that he has buy-in for. But I wouldn't try to force change over there. Not at this point. You know, and it's not waving the white flag. Absolutely not waving the right flag. It's changing the way that you are looking at the situation of how your child can be served. Okay?